The real reason why we don't believe in the chance to change our deadly and destructive system anymore is, in combination with repetition bias, survivorship bias. We don't see an alternative. Nowhere. Not in the former Eastern Bloc anymore, and not in our mainstream media. All we see repeated all day are the frameworks of necroliberalism.
Welcome to Deconstructing Necroliberalism.
So we hyper-focus on that and those that and who survived the filter process, and overlook that and those that and who died in the filter process. We don't listen to those our system killed, not even on matters that concern our system. Instead, we listen to those who our system brings to the top, the most reckless people. We listen and admire them. Just like the stories of Palestinians rarely make it through this media filter, the fairly different frameworks and perspectives of US socialist parties, for example, also don't make it to CNN, MSNBC, or NPR. Instead, we always see the same old necroliberal position of both major parties repeated, and thus normalized. An extremely narrow segment of the political world spectrum of possibilities to live in organized society. This filter process, too, just like confirmation bias, I've explained in the first segment, leads to false assumptions about which ideas and perspectives actually have a broad consensus and which don't. And we usually assume that our mainstream perspective is shared by way more people than it is actually the case, which in turn confirms and reinforces our conviction that we are right. In reality, half of the US electorate doesn't identify and agree with any of the two major parties, and oftentimes doesn't vote for it. Hence, these two parties do not really represent the US-American perspective, yet their rule is frequently presented as such as democratic representation of the will of the people. That is what democracy is supposed to be. Yet 50% have no representation at all because of the two parties' extreme proximity, and nearly 60% want a multi-party system and a broader spectrum of worldviews in politics in the US. And 27% even favor third-party candidates months before the election, but get bullied into self-harming voting and not voting their values and conscience. They get anxious about their favorite choice, the choice that would be best for them, through manipulative rhetorics and narratives about third parties and third-party voting. The more common, however, beliefs are, the more likely we adopt them. Tragically, that's also true for beliefs thought to believe to be common, especially when they are presented as common. It's due to our desire for acceptance, harmony, and conformity, and fear of exclusion from society, that we think and act irrationally to minimize conflict within our in-group. We really don't want to be excluded, understandably. And if you're surrounded in your life by vocal Democrats and don't know too many Greens or Socialists, that will work in you, whether you like it or not. So we not only laugh what we've always heard and what confirms our worldview, which has been built up by what we've always heard, that's repetition bias and confirmation bias, we also love it when it's confirmed by society and by our in-group. Even worse, we love it even more when it's confirmed by so-called experts of our in-group. Experts produced by our system who support our system, who are usually quite privileged and paid by our system. And experts are the electoral politics industry, pollers who frame polls in biased ways which disadvantage third parties, politic guys who reiterate party frames, journalists who need to maintain access to politicians, and also present the perspective of the media outlets' billionaire owner, police officers, military generals, and anonymous intelligence sources who must be real insiders and really insightful. and Democrat and Republican politicians who made it to the top, and must be really intelligent and really insightful, right? And Taylor Swift, another billionaire who could have only become so rich because she didn't share out her profits fairly to all those who worked their asses off to make this huge success possible. She surely wants the best for all overexploited workers, working 2 or 3 jobs to make ends meet. Surely uses a platform to promote a party which wants system change accordingly, right? Let me explain why we accept over-exploiting billionaires as authorities in our political system, which massively overprivileges them and exploits us. Unconsciously and irrationally, we believe that our world is just. We do so because we in the global north are fairly privileged and don't want to see on whose starved and murdered backs we are systemically privileged. We desperately want to believe that we are good people, which we are conveniently being retold and retold over and over again by our mainstream media, and therefore falsely believe, thanks to repetition bias. The whole world is just looking up to us, right? And if they don't, they are just jealous, right? They just hate our freedoms to exploit them. What a surprise. If, however, we are good people, not systemically exploiting the other, and if, therefore, the world is basically just, then we need a different explanation for why people are so desperately poor. It cannot be our just system. It must be them. They must somehow deserve their injustices. They must be lazy, incapable, irrational, too emotional, too aggressive, divisive, or uncivilized and terroristic. It must be the personal attitude if it's white people, and it must be inherent in their culture or religion if it's brown people or Muslims. We are falsely justifying this system which privileges us and marginalizes the other to death, and we do so by victim blaming, by shifting the blame away from our beloved system we vote for again and again, or in other words, by shifting the blame away from us onto our victims. The other side of our fictional just world model, which ignores our system's inherent injustices and violence and hence needs to find surrogate explanations, is that we not only assume that injustice is somehow deserved due to moral inferiority, but also that we view people who are successful in our system as morally and intellectually superior and wiser. Taylor Swift, Beyoncé, Eminem. We rather listen to them than to loser Jill Stein, right? And research has indeed shown that we, when undecided on election day, rather vote for the party which is polled to be the likely winner. In our supposedly meritocratic society, we want and we need to be associated with winning, not losing. But what do we really gain with this kind of irrational thinking? An inherently ever-escalating, deadly and destructive system both winning parties promote.